Hey everyone, tonight we're going on a sleepy, fascinating journey back in time all the way to ancient China to explore the wonderfully quirky world of their key sleep habits. Imagine yourself not tucked into your modern bed, but lying on a hard raised platform, perhaps a kung bed in a humble dwelling, or a finely carved wooden bed in a nobleman's estate. The air is still perhaps carrying the faint scent of incense or wood smoke. You realize pretty quickly that a comfortable night's rest in ancient China was a very different experience from hitting snooze on your smartphone. And let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a single night on some of their pillows without a serious crick in your neck. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Your likes and follows help this channel grow, and they let me know you're keen for more journeys like this one. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've just arrived in the quiet nocturnal world of ancient China, a realm where sleep wasn't just a physical necessity, but a practice deeply intertwined with health philosophy and the rhythms of daily life, a mainstream historical fact. You'll quickly discover is that the ancient Chinese, like many pre-industrial societies, generally adhered to a biphasic or segmented sleep pattern. This meant they typically slept in two distinct shifts, an initial period after dusk, waking for a few hours in the middle of the night for various activities, and then returning to sleep until dawn. You can almost feel the natural rhythm of the body adjusting to the fading light, prompting an early descent into slumber, only to awaken refreshed for a period of quiet activity before the final stretch of sleep. Now for a quirky tidbit. During that middle of the night waking period, people didn't just lie there staring at the ceiling. This first watch or wakeful interval was a common and accepted part of the night. People might use this time for quiet contemplation, meditation, prayer, tending to household chores that required peace and quiet, visiting neighbors, or even engaging in scholarly study. Imagine waking up at 2 a.m., not to scroll through social media, but to write poetry, discuss philosophy with a friend, or quietly work on your calligraphy. It sounds almost productive, doesn't it? Historians still argue whether this biphasic sleep was a purely natural response to the absence of artificial light, or if it was a cultural practice actively encouraged for spiritual or intellectual pursuits. Perhaps it was a happy synergy of both where necessity became a virtue. You consider the habit basic sleeping arrangements. For the vast majority of the population, beds weren't soft, springy mattresses. They were often hard raised platforms, sometimes made of wood, bamboo, or even brick. In wealthier homes, these platforms might be intricately carved and adorned with silk hangings, but the underlying surface remained firm. You feel the unyielding firmness beneath you, a stark contrast to the plush comfort you're accustomed to. This hard surface, far from being uncomfortable to the ancient Chinese, was often believed to be beneficial for health-promoting good posture and invigorating the body's key life force. The early rising habits were also deeply ingrained. Before the advent of reliable artificial light, daily rhythms were dictated by the sun. Work, whether in the fields or in the workshops, began at dawn. Therefore, getting up with the first light was a practical necessity, reinforcing the early bedtime that facilitated the segmented sleep pattern. You hear the distant crow of a rooster, signaling the approach of dawn, a timeless alarm clock. This natural, unhurried approach to sleep, free from the tyranny of alarm clocks and rigid 8-hour expectations, allowed for a flexible rhythm that flowed with the body's inherent cycles. It reveals a sophisticated, if unscientific by modern standards, understanding of rest deeply integrated into their cultural fabric. You've just dipped your toe into the segmented sleep patterns and firm sleeping surfaces of ancient China. Now let's talk about a specific aspect of their bedding that might make your neck ache just thinking about it, but which they believed was crucial for well-being. Hard pillows, clear minds. For the ancient Chinese, a rock-hard pillow wasn't a punishment. It was a prescription for health, beauty, and even intellectual sharpness. Our mainstream historical fact is that the ancient Chinese rarely used soft, fluffy pillows like ours. Instead, their pillows were typically made from firm materials such as ceramic, wood, bamboo, bronze, or even intricately carved jade. You imagine resting your head on a smooth, cool ceramic pillow, perhaps painted with delicate landscapes or auspicious symbols. It feels utterly unyielding, a far cry from the memory foam you might be accustomed to. He probably thought a soft pillow was just an invitation for a fuzzy brain. Now for a quirky tidbit. These hard pillows weren't just for comfort or lack thereof. They were believed to offer a myriad of health benefits. Proponents claimed they promoted good circulation, kept the head cool, which was thought to prevent certain ailments, and even maintained the shape of one's hair and prevented wrinkles. Some high-status individuals might even have had pillows with hollowed-out sections where cooling herbs or aromatic flowers could be placed to further enhance sleep and well-being. Imagine a noblewoman choosing a jade pillow not just for its beauty, but because it promised to keep her complexion smooth and her mind clear for court intrigues. Historians still argue whether the widespread use of hard pillows was primarily a result of available materials and cultural tradition, or if the perceived health and beauty benefits were the main driving force behind their adoption across all social classes. Perhaps it was a practical custom that later gained elaborate justifications. You realize that the firmness of these pillows would naturally encourage sleeping on one's back, which was considered beneficial for health and alignment. It prevented the head from sinking in too deeply, ensuring proper airflow around the neck and head, especially in hot weather. You feel the unyielding support, realizing that it forces a certain posture throughout the night. For scholars and intellectuals, the clear mind aspect of hard pillows was particularly appealing. A cool head was associated with intellectual acuity and mental alertness. It was believed that a soft, warm pillow could induce sluggishness and dull the mind, whereas a hard, cool surface promoted wakefulness and clarity even during sleep. It's almost like a built-in mental alarm system, ensuring you don't oversleep your brilliant ideas. The craftsmanship of these pillows could be exquisite, especially for the wealthy. Intricate carvings, vibrant glazes, and precious materials transform these functional objects into works of art. A ceramic pillow wasn't just something to rest your head on. It was a statement of status and a testament to the belief in its beneficial properties. The ancient Chinese, in their choice of hard pillows, demonstrated a unique philosophy of rest, where comfort was secondary to perceived wellness and a perpetually clear mind. You've just been introduced to the rather unyielding concept of ancient Chinese hard pillows and their supposed benefits for a clear mind. Now let's move from the individual's headrest to the communal sleeping platform, a truly ingenious system for warmth and wellness, the Meshun Kang bed's warmth and wellness. This wasn't just a bed, it was a heated architectural feature, a central hearth that influenced an entire household's sleep and health. A mushy mainstream historical fact is that the Kang or Kung was a traditional heated sleeping platform, particularly prevalent in northern China, where winters were brutally cold. It was essentially a raised platform, typically made of brick or packed earth, with a series of flues or tunnels running underneath. A stove often in the adjacent kitchen would vent its smoke and hot air through these flues, heating the entire bed surface. You imagine lying down on this firm but wonderfully warm surface, the heat radiating upwards, chasing away the winter chill. He probably thought his Kang bed was the ultimate luxury, far better than any silly electric blanket. Now, for a quirky tidbit. The Kang wasn't just for sleeping. During the day, it served as a versatile living space where families would gather to eat, socialize, work on crafts, and perform daily chores, all benefiting from its warmth. It was the central hub of the home, a multifunctional piece of furniture that adapted to the rhythms of life. The heat was also believed to have therapeutic benefits, easing aches and pains and promoting circulation. Imagine a family huddled on the warm Kang in the depths of winter, sharing a meal, and stories the very warmth emanating from their sleeping platform, providing comfort and unity. Historians still argue whether the Kang's design was primarily driven by the practical need for heating in cold climates, or if its perceived health benefits were equally significant in its widespread adoption. Perhaps it was a brilliant confluence of both, where necessity birthed a remarkably effective and comforting invention. You realize that the Kang provided consistent radiant heat throughout the night, a stark contrast to simply relying on blankets or open fires which offered uneven warmth. This stable temperature would have greatly improved sleep quality during the freezing winters, allowing for deeper, more restorative rest. You can almost feel the gentle, persistent warmth seeping into your bones, warding off the bitter cold that would otherwise permeate a simple dwelling. The construction of a kang was a communal effort, often requiring skilled masons to ensure proper airflow and heat distribution while also safely venting smoke outside. This made it a significant investment for a household, highlighting its importance as a central element of comfort and well-being. Beyond physical comfort, the kang also fostered a sense of togetherness and communal living, as family members would often sleep side by side on the large platform. This shared warmth created a bond, reinforcing familial ties. The ancient Chinese, through the ingenious design of the kang bed, transformed a practical heating solution into a cornerstone of home life, offering both physical warmth and a unique contribution to their sleep habits. It reminds us that sometimes the simplest technologies born from necessity are the most profound. You've just warmed up to the genius of the kang bed, a testament to ancient Chinese innovation and comfort. Now let's delve into the actual pattern of their nightly rest, a rhythm that was surprisingly different from our modern expectations. The basic sleep cycles. For the ancient Chinese, sleeping in two distinct shifts wasn't a problem. It was just how things were done. A mainstream historical fact is that prior to the widespread availability of artificial light, think gas lamps, then electricity, a large portion of the global population, including the ancient Chinese, naturally experienced what's known as segmented or biphasic sleep. This meant a first sleep that began shortly after dusk, lasting for a few hours, followed by a period of wakefulness in the deep of night, and then a second sleep that continued until dawn. You imagine yourself waking naturally in the quiet darkness, not jolted by an alarm, but simply stirring, feeling a subtle alertness settle over you. He probably thought hitting snooze meant just rolling over for another nap after his middle-of-the-night poetry session. Now, for a quirky tidbit, during this nocturnal waking period, which could last for an hour or two, ancient Chinese individuals weren't just bored or restless. This was a socially accepted and often productive time. People might get up to tend to a fire, use the latrine, quietly reflect, meditate, visit a neighbor, engage in prayer, or even perform light chores or scholarly work that benefited from the profound quiet of the night. Imagine a scholar discreetly lighting a small lamp to work on his calligraphy, or a devoted Buddhist monk using the stillness for deep meditation. It sounds almost peaceful, doesn't it? Historians still argue whether this biphasic sleep pattern was a purely natural biological response to the absence of artificial light, allowing the body's circadian rhythm to express itself more freely, or if cultural practices and societal needs actively encouraged and structured this wakeful interval. Perhaps it was a synergistic dance between nature and nurture, a rhythm accepted rather than fought against. You realize that this natural rhythm contrasts sharply with our modern obsession with 8 uninterrupted hours of sleep. For the ancient Chinese, a fractured night's rest wasn't a sign of insomnia. It was simply the normal, healthy way to sleep. There was no pressure to fall back asleep immediately. Instead, this middle period was a time for quiet activity that didn't demand intense focus or social interaction. You feel the profound stillness of the night, a silence that invites contemplation rather than restless tossing and turning. The transition between the first sleep and the second sleep would have been fluid and natural. As the night deepened, the body would naturally feel the pull back to slumber, entering the second sleep, often without effort. This undisturbed flow allowed the body to respond to its own internal clock rather than external demands. This ancient sleep pattern highlights a vastly different relationship with the night. It wasn't a block of unconsciousness to be rushed through, but a dynamic period with distinct phases, each holding its own potential for rest, reflection, and quiet productivity. The biphasic sleep cycle reveals a fundamental difference in how the ancient Chinese perceived and experienced their nightly repose, a wisdom of natural rhythms that we perhaps lost in our brightly lit 24/7 world. You've just explored the surprisingly flexible biphasic sleep patterns of ancient China and the logic behind their hard pillows. Now let's ascend the social ladder to the very pinnacle of power and observe how sleep played out at the highest level, the Kamikurun. Emperor's elaborate slumbers. For the Son of Heaven, even rest was a matter of ritual symbolism and pervasive surveillance. A Russian mainstream historical fact is that the emperor's daily life within the Forbidden City was governed by incredibly strict protocols, and his sleep was no exception. Far from a simple bedtime routine, it was a highly regulated affair overseen by a vast retinue of eunuchs, palace maids, and imperial guards. You imagine the emperor retiring to his bedchamber, not alone, but surrounded by layers of attendants, each with a specific role in preparing his sleeping environment. He probably thought falling asleep was the hardest part of his job, given all the fuss. Now, for a quirky tidbit, the emperor rarely slept in the same bedchamber every night, and sometimes he would even move locations multiple times within a single night. This practice was primarily a security measure intended to prevent assassination attempts by making his whereabouts unpredictable to potential plotters. Imagine the logistical nightmare of preparing a different imperial bedchamber each night, ensuring all the right silk linens, special pillows, and aromatic incenses were in place, all while maintaining absolute secrecy. It's like a perpetual game of musical beds, but with much higher stakes. Historians still argue whether the shifting sleeping locations were genuinely effective as a security measure, or if they were largely a symbolic deterrent amplified by court rumors and paranoia. Perhaps it was a mixture of both, a practical measure imbued with psychological weight. You realize that the emperor's sleeping environment was a testament to his immense power and the anxiety surrounding his safety. His bed would be a grand, often richly carved and draped affair, far softer than the common Kang bed, piled high with silk mattresses and embroidered quilts. Yet this luxury was paradoxically intertwined with constant vigilance. Eunuchs would stand guard unseen but ever present throughout the night. The air would be carefully regulated, perhaps with cooling screens in summer, or portable braziers in winter, and subtle perfumes or incenses might be burned to aid relaxation or purify the air. The emperor's sleep was not just about his personal rest, it was symbolic of the stability of the entire empire. A restless emperor, or one plagued by bad dreams, as you'll discover later, could be seen as an ominous sign for the nation. Therefore, every effort was made to ensure his undisturbed repose, even if it meant sacrificing his personal privacy. You hear the faint rhythmic footsteps of unseen guards patrolling outside, a constant reminder of the vigilance surrounding his slumber. Even the waking of the emperor was a ritual. He would be gently roused at a precise hour, bathed and dressed by attendants ready to resume his imperial duties. There was no hitting the snooze button for the son of heaven. The emperor's elaborate slumbers were a microcosm of his entire existence, a life of unparalleled luxury, but also of intense scrutiny and ceremonial obligation, where even the most private moments were meticulously choreographed for the sake of power and security. You've just had a fascinating glimpse into the emperor's highly regulated and strategically shifting slumbers. Now let's descend a few rungs down the imperial ladder and discover how those lower in rank, constantly busy and under pressure, managed to grab some precious rest, the courtiers' clandestine catnaps. In the bustling, demanding world of the Forbidden City, finding a moment for illicit, brief repose was an art form. A mainstream historical fact is that courtiers in the Forbidden City, from high-ranking officials to minor attendants, faced incredibly long and demanding workdays, often starting before dawn and extending late into the night. They attended endless meetings, prepared documents, managed imperial affairs, and were constantly on call. You imagine a fatigued minister, his mind reeling from hours of complex discussions, desperately needing just a few moments of unconsciousness. There was no designated nap time on the imperial schedule, and certainly no comfortable couches in the waiting rooms. He probably thought a solid 5 minutes of sleep hidden behind a pillar was a greater luxury than any imperial banquet. Now, for a New York quirky tidbit, courtiers became masters of snatching brief moments of sleep in unconventional and often discreet locations. This could be leaning against a wall in a quiet hallway, dozing off while waiting in an antechamber, or even taking a quick snooze in a sedan chair while being transported between palaces. They developed the ability to fall asleep almost instantly, a skill born of sheer exhaustion. Imagine a junior official during a lull in court proceedings, subtly resting his head on his arm, appearing to be deeply contemplative, but in reality catching a precious 30 winks. Historians still argue whether these clandestine catnaps were tacitly tolerated by higher authorities, who understood the demands of court life, or if they were strictly forbidden and carried a constant risk of punishment for perceived laziness? Perhaps it was a constant unspoken negotiation between human need and imperial discipline. You realize that the pressure to maintain alertness and perform flawlessly was immense. A sleepy courtier might miss a crucial instruction, commit a gaffe, or even fall out of favor. Thus, these brief strategic naps were not about indulgence. They were a necessary survival tactic, a way to recharge just enough to avoid disastrous errors. You can almost feel the desperate pull of sleep, a fleeting surrender to exhaustion amidst the palace's relentless demands. The choice of location for these catnaps was crucial. Seclusion, however temporary, was key. A quiet corner of a courtyard, a less frequented pavilion, or even a hidden alcove within a larger building could become a temporary sanctuary for stolen moments of rest. These were not places designed for comfort, but places that offered a brief reprieve from watchful eyes. The duration of these naps was typically very short, mere minutes sometimes. They were designed to provide just enough mental reset to continue functioning. The ability to power nap on demand, a skill many of us aspire to today, was a fundamental part of a courtier's survival toolkit in the Forbidden City. The courtier's clandestine catnaps reveal a hidden world of human struggle and adaptation, where even sleep became a strategic resource in the high-pressure environment of imperial service. You've just glimpsed the strategic art of the courtier's clandestine catnaps. Now let's pivot to a group whose very profession often put them at odds with the demands of the body, embracing a kind of sleep deprivation as a badge of honor. They were scholars' sleep sacrifices. For the intellectuals of ancient China, the pursuit of knowledge often trumped the need for rest, leading to quirky habits and sometimes predictable consequences. Ada's mainstream historical fact is that scholarship in ancient China, particularly the mastery of classical texts and preparation for the rigorous imperial civil service examinations, demanded immense dedication and countless hours of study. Aspiring officials and renowned thinkers alike often spent years poring over scrolls, memorizing vast amounts of text, and practicing calligraphy. You imagine a young scholar hunched over his desk late into the night, the faint glow of an oil lamp illuminating his face surrounded by stacks of bamboo slips or paper scrolls. He probably thought sleep was just a minor inconvenience interrupting his quest for enlightenment. Now for a quirky tidbit. Many scholars would deliberately limit their sleep to extend their study hours, believing that intellectual pursuit was a higher calling than bodily rest. Some even employed extreme measures to prevent themselves from falling asleep, such as tying their hair to a beam above their desk so that a nodding head would pull painfully, or sitting on uncomfortable stools, or splashing cold water on their faces. Imagine a scholar desperate to finish a text, feeling a sharp tug on his hair as his head begins to droop, a self-inflicted alarm clock. Historians still argue whether these extreme sleep sacrifices genuinely enhanced intellectual performance or merely led to chronic exhaustion and mental burnout. Perhaps it was a mixture of stoic dedication and a touch of masochistic idealism. You realize that for these scholars, the pursuit of knowledge was paramount. They saw sleep as a necessary evil, a concession to the frailties of the body, rather than a vital component of mental function. The idea was to squeeze as much waking studying time out of each day as humanly possible, viewing sleep as wasted hours that could be dedicated to intellectual growth. You almost feel the weary drag of their minds pushing through the fog of exhaustion, driven by an insatiable thirst for learning. The consequences of such sleep sacrifices were often evident. While some might claim enhanced clarity in their initial hours of wakefulness, prolonged deprivation inevitably led to reduced concentration errors in transcription and diminished cognitive function. Yet the cultural reverence for scholarly diligence often overshadowed these practical drawbacks. Despite the self-imposed deprivation, scholars also understood the necessity of some rest, even if grudgingly. Their biphasic sleep patterns, remember Section 4, might have offered a natural way to break up the long study sessions, providing brief periods of respite before resuming their arduous intellectual labor. The scholar's sleep sacrifices therefore reveal a fascinating tension between the boundless ambition of the human mind and the undeniable demands of the physical body, a testament to their unwavering dedication to knowledge, even at the cost of a good night's sleep. You've just explored the often grueling sleep sacrifices of ancient Chinese scholars, driven by their relentless pursuit of knowledge. Now let's pivot to a philosophical path that viewed sleep not as an obstacle to overcome, but as a vital component of spiritual cultivation. Taoists sleep inner harmony. For Taoist practitioners, rest was an active practice, a way to harmonize with the cosmos and achieve inner balance. A mainstream historical fact is that Taoism, a profound philosophical and religious system originating in ancient China, emphasizes living in harmony with the Tao, the natural order of the universe, cultivating Kuai life force, and achieving longevity and spiritual enlightenment. You imagine a Taoist sage in a secluded mountain retreat, perhaps reclining serenely by a waterfall, his breath slow and deep. For them, sleep wasn't just about physical recovery. It was a time for the soul to wander freely, to absorb cosmic energy, and to align with the rhythms of nature. He probably thought a good night's sleep was more enlightening than 1,000 philosophical debates. Now for a quirky tidbit. Taoists developed specific meditation and breathing techniques to practice even while falling asleep or during their sleep, aiming for a state of deep restorative rest, often referred to as stillness in motion. They might use specific postures, visualize energy flows, or focus on subtle internal sensations to guide themselves into a profoundly harmonized sleep, sometimes blurring the lines between sleep and meditative trance. Imagine a Taoist master entering a state of lucid dreaming, believing he's communing with immortals or exploring distant realms, all while technically asleep. Historians still argue whether the described benefits of these advanced sleep practices were purely subjective spiritual experiences or if they genuinely led to measurable improvements in physical and mental well-being. Perhaps it was a powerful psychosomatic phenomenon where belief fostered real physiological effects. You realize that for Taoists, the quality of sleep was directly linked to the cultivation of Quirky. Restless or disturbed sleep was seen as a sign of imbalance, while deep tranquil slumber allowed Quirky to circulate freely, nourishing the body and spirit. They believed that just as the body needed nourishment from food, the spirit needed nourishment from proper rest. You can almost feel the peaceful stillness emanating from a Taoist in deep repose, a quiet energy humming beneath the surface. Taoist texts often contain detailed advice on optimal sleep practices, including specific sleeping directions, e.g., aligning with cardinal directions for better energy flow, dietary recommendations, avoiding stimulating foods before bed, and the use of calming herbs or incenses. This wasn't guesswork. It was a systematic approach to enhancing rest for spiritual purposes. This philosophy of sleep encouraged a deep respect for the body's natural rhythms. Instead of fighting against sleep, as some scholars might, Taoists embraced it as a vital period of internal transformation and connection with the universe. It was a holistic view where mind, body, and spirit converged in the quietude of night. The Taoist approach to sleep was an active pursuit of inner harmony, transforming a mundane biological function into a profound spiritual practice, revealing a wisdom that truly believed rest could lead to enlightenment. You've just explored the Taoist philosophy of sleep as a path to inner harmony and spiritual cultivation. Now let's consider another profound spiritual tradition that similarly integrated rest with mindful practice, albeit with its own unique approach. Buddhist meditative rest. For Buddhist monks in ancient China, sleep was often a continuation of their meditative discipline, a period of awareness even in repose. A mainstream historical fact is that Buddhism originating in India spread to China and became deeply influential, particularly from the Han Dynasty onwards. Central to Buddhist practice is meditation, mindfulness, and the cultivation of wisdom and compassion. You imagine a Buddhist monk in a tranquil temple, perhaps in a mountain monastery, his robes simple and his demeanor serene. For them, even the act of resting could be an opportunity for spiritual advancement, blurring the lines between waking mindfulness and the state of slumber. He probably thought dreaming was just another form of karma, so best to keep it chill. Now for a quirky tidbit. Buddhist monks often practiced a specific posture for sleeping known as the lion's posture or Buddha's sleeping posture. This involved lying on the right side with the head resting on the hand and the legs slightly bent. This posture was believed to be conducive to deep conscious sleep, preventing oversleeping, promoting clear dreams, and aiding in immediate wakefulness for meditation. It was said to be the posture the Buddha himself adopted for his final passing into parinirvana. Imagine a monk carefully positioning himself for sleep, not just seeking comfort, but aligning his body for spiritual awareness even in repose. Historians still argue whether the lion's posture was adopted primarily for its perceived spiritual benefits, or if it also offered practical advantages, like improved circulation or reduced snoring in communal sleeping environments. Perhaps it was a symbolic posture that also offered unexpected physiological perks. You realize that for Buddhist monks, sleep was not seen as an escape from reality, but as another state of consciousness to be explored and ideally controlled. They aimed for a state where awareness could persist, even as the body rested, allowing for continued meditation or lucid dreaming that contributed to spiritual insight. This involved practices to calm the mind before sleep, to reduce mental chatter, and to cultivate a sense of inner peace. You can almost feel the deep tranquility emanating from a monk in such a state, a quietude that permeates even his rest. Buddhist monastic rules often included guidelines for sleep emphasizing moderation. Not too much, not too little. Excessive sleep was seen as an impediment to practice, while insufficient sleep could hinder concentration. The goal was balanced rest, ensuring the body was sufficiently restored without succumbing to laziness. This balance was critical for their demanding daily schedule of prayer, study, and meditation. The environment for sleep in Buddhist monasteries would typically be simple and austere, promoting detachment from material comfort. A thin mat, a firm pillow, and minimal bedding were common, reinforcing their vows of asceticism. This simplicity, paradoxically, could lead to deeper, less disturbed sleep, free from the distractions of overindulgence. The Buddhist approach to sleep was a mindful continuum of their spiritual path, transforming nightly rest into an active practice of enlightenment and inner peace. You've just explored how Buddhist monks integrated sleep with meditative awareness, turning rest into a spiritual practice. Now let's consider a more practical approach to achieving good sleep, one that relied on the abundant natural resources of ancient China. Medicinal herbs for sleep. For those troubled by restlessness or insomnia, the ancient Chinese pharmacopoeia offered a rich array of botanicals aimed at calming the mind and inducing peaceful slumber. A rather mainstream historical fact is that traditional Chinese medicine TCM possessed an extensive knowledge of herbal remedies, and the use of plants to treat various ailments, including sleep disorders, was a well-established practice for millennia. You imagine an ancient apothecary, rows of dried herbs, roots, and flowers neatly organized in wooden drawers, each with its specific therapeutic property. For a person struggling to sleep, these natural remedies were the first line of defense, a gentle persuasion to slumber. He probably thought a spoonful of poppy seeds was far more civilized than counting sheep. Now for a quirky tidbit, some common herbs used for sleep were also prized for other purposes, blurring the lines between medicine and daily life. For instance, jujube dates dasao, a popular fruit, were also revered for their calming and nourishing properties, often consumed as a snack or in teas to aid sleep. Another example is longan fruit longyan ro, known for its sweet taste and believed to nourish the heart and spleen, thereby calming the spirit and promoting restful sleep. Imagine a courtier feigning a craving for a sweet, nutritious snack, secretly hoping the longan would also calm his anxious mind and lull him to sleep. Historians still argue whether the precise mechanisms of these herbal remedies were understood beyond empirical observation, or if the strong cultural belief in their efficacy played a significant role in their perceived success. Perhaps it was a potent combination of both, where centuries of observation met a profound faith in nature's healing power. You realize that the approach to treating insomnia was holistic, considering the underlying imbalances. Remember the humors from our Greek journey. Chinese medicine had similar concepts of qi, yin, yang, and organ systems. A specific herbal formula might be prescribed tailored to the individual's unique constitution and the perceived cause of their sleeplessness. It wasn't just about knocking you out. It was about restoring balance. You can almost smell the earthy, pungent aroma of a simmering herbal decoction, a hopeful scent of approaching slumber. Common herbs used included swan, zao, rensour, jujube seed. Renowned for its sedative properties and often used in formulas for insomnia and anxiety. Huanpi, mimosa tree bark, was another popular choice, believed to calm the spirit and relieve depression, often associated with restless sleep. These were not just single ingredients, but often combined in complex formulas, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of herbal synergy. The administration of these herbs could vary as teas, decoctions, powders, or even infused into small palatable snacks. This allowed for discreet consumption, particularly for those in court who might not want to openly admit to sleep troubles. The ancient Chinese, through their vast herbal knowledge, sought to gently guide the body and mind into restful sleep, transforming the act of healing into a natural, almost poetic process. You've just learned how ancient Chinese medicine harnessed powerful herbs to coax reluctant minds into sleep. Now let's pivot from the practicalities of slumber to its more mystical dimension, dream interpretation and omens. For the ancient Chinese, dreams were far more than random nocturnal fantasies. They were potent messages, glimpses into the future, and direct communications from the divine or the spirit world. A mainstream historical fact is that dream interpretation was a significant and respected practice in ancient China, with specialized dream interpreters serving at court and for the general populace. Texts on dream interpretation existed, categorizing symbols and predicting their outcomes. You imagine a worried courtier after a particularly vivid dream, seeking out a master interpreter, eager to understand its hidden meaning for his fortune or the emperor's destiny. He probably kept a dream journal more diligently than his tax records. Now for a quirky tidbit. Certain dreams were considered highly auspicious, particularly those involving dragons, phoenixes, or specific auspicious animals, often believed to foretell imperial births or great successes. Conversely, dreams of crumbling walls, murky water, or losing teeth could be interpreted as omens of ill fortune, sickness, or even death. The emperor himself would pay close attention to his dreams, as they were believed to reflect the will of heaven and directly impact the stability of the realm. Imagine an emperor waking in a cold sweat from a nightmare about a withered tree, immediately consulting his dream masters for an interpretation that could influence state policy. Historians still argue whether the detailed interpretations of dreams were genuinely believed to be accurate predictions, or if they served as psychological tools to manage anxiety, interpret as subconscious thoughts, or even subtly influence political decisions by framing events in auspicious or inauspicious terms. Perhaps it was a complex blend of prophecy and psychological manipulation. You realize that for the ancient Chinese, the sleep world was not a passive state, but an active realm of communication. What happened in your dreams could have tangible consequences in your waking life. This meant that the quality of one's sleep was not just about rest. It was about ensuring one received clear, benevolent messages and avoided disturbing, ominous ones. You almost feel the weight of expectation, hoping for a dream of soaring phoenixes rather than falling leaves. Different philosophical and religious traditions had their own approaches to dreams. Taoists believed dreams could be opportunities for the soul to wander and experience other realms, a form of spiritual journey. Buddhists might view dreams as manifestations of karmic imprints or opportunities for lucid awareness. This rich tapestry of belief added layers of meaning to every nocturnal vision. Dream interpretation was also deeply intertwined with traditional Chinese medicine. Disturbing dreams could be seen as symptoms of an imbalance in the body's humors or energy, prompting a physician to prescribe specific herbs or dietary changes to restore harmony and thus ensure more peaceful, positive dreams. The sleep habits of the ancient Chinese were thus not just about the physical act of resting, but about engaging with a profound, often mystical dimension of human experience, where every dream held a potential message from the universe. You've just explored the mystical realm of dream interpretation, where even slumber held prophetic meaning. Now let's turn our attention to the unsleeping sentinels who ensured that the palace remained a haven of quiet for those very dreams. Palace watchmen's wary nights. For emperors and courtiers alike, their restful sleep depended on the diligent, often tedious work of countless guards and eunuchs, who maintained silence and security throughout the long hours of darkness. A mainstream historical fact is that imperial palaces like the Forbidden City were incredibly secure and strictly controlled environments, especially at night. A vast system of guards, watchmen, often eunuchs and patrolling soldiers, maintained strict order, enforced curfews, and ensured no unauthorized movement or noise disturbed the imperial household. You imagine a watchman, lantern in hand, slowly pacing a long, dark corridor, his ears keenly attuned to every subtle creak or whisper. He probably thought the biggest challenge wasn't fighting invaders, but keeping the emperor's pet parrot from squawking at 3 a.m. Now for a quirky tidbit. Palace watchmen often carried clappers or drums, which they would strike at regular intervals throughout the night to mark the watches, specific periods of time that divided the night. These rhythmic sounds, far from being disruptive, were a comforting sign that order was being maintained and that the guards were alert and performing their duties. It was a nocturnal auditory signal of security, a kind of ancient live white noise machine. Imagine the soft, rhythmic tap-tap-tap of the watchman's clapper echoing through the vast, dark palace, a subtle reassurance that all was well and you could safely sleep. Historians still argue whether the primary purpose of these watchman sounds was for timekeeping security or a psychological effect of reassurance for the sleeping residents. Perhaps it was a multi-purpose auditory signal, providing both practical information and a sense of calm. You realize that maintaining profound quiet was paramount. Any loud noise, a dropped object, a shouted command, or an argument, could disrupt the emperor's or a high-ranking official's sleep, potentially leading to severe punishment for the responsible party. Therefore, watchmen were meticulously trained to move silently, communicate in whispers, and immediately address any disturbances. You can almost feel the hushed atmosphere of the palace at night, a deliberate suppression of sound. The watchman's vigilance extended to enforcing strict curfews. Movement within the inner palace after dark was severely restricted, and anyone found wandering without explicit permission faced serious consequences. This limited nighttime activity further contributed to the overall tranquility, creating an optimal environment for sleep and dreams. For the emperor and his inner circle, the presence of these unseen but ever-present watchmen was a double-edged sword, a source of security, but also a constant reminder of the surveillance. Remember Section 5, Emperor's Elaborate Slumbers, and Section 17, Emperor's Spies' Culinary Oversight. Their wary nights ensured the physical safety and peaceful slumber of the imperial household, allowing the powerful to rest confident that the unseen guardians kept vigil over the sleeping palace. The palace watchmen, through their silent vigilance and rhythmic signals, were the unsung guardians of ancient Chinese sleep. You've just been reassured by the quiet vigilance of the palace watchmen ensuring undisturbed slumber. Now let's consider a factor that dictated sleep patterns far beyond imperial decrees, the changing world outside. This brings us to seasonal sleep adjustments, revealing how ancient Chinese adapted their rest cycles to the natural rhythms of the year. Another mainstream historical fact is that traditional Chinese society was deeply agrarian, with daily life intrinsically linked to the cycles of the seasons. Work schedules, clothing, and even diet shifted significantly with the changing weather, and sleep was no exception. You imagine a farmer in winter seeking longer hours of deep sleep to conserve energy, and then in summer rising earlier, and perhaps napping more, aligning with the sun's demanding presence. He probably thought fighting nature's sleep cues was as foolish as arguing with the weather. Now for a quirky tidbit. Traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, provided detailed recommendations for adjusting sleep patterns according to the seasons to maintain optimal health and balance. In spring, one should go to bed late and rise early to align with the growing yang energy. In summer, the advice was go to bed late and rise early and sleep for a short time at noon, a clear nod to napping. Autumn called for earlier bedtimes and rising with the chickens, while winter demanded going to bed early and rising late to conserve qi and protect the body's essence. Imagine a scholar meticulously adjusting his bedtime, not by the clock, but by the subtle shifts in daylight and temperature, all in the name of internal harmony. Historians still argue whether these seasonal sleep prescriptions were strictly adhered to by the general population, or if they represented an ideal primarily followed by those with leisure or strong health convictions. Perhaps it was an aspirational guideline followed to the best of their ability. You realize that the availability of natural light played a huge role. In summer, longer daylight hours meant people naturally stayed awake longer into the evening and woke earlier. The intensity of summer heat also prompted the need for midday rest. Remember our discussion of courtiers' catnaps? This was part of a broader cultural pattern. Conversely, the short, dark days of winter encourage longer nights of sleep, maximizing the body's natural inclination to conserve warmth and energy. You can almost feel the natural pull towards longer, deeper slumber as the days grow shorter and colder. The types of sleeping arrangements would also subtly change. In summer, lighter bedding, more open windows if security allowed, and cooler sleeping surfaces like bamboo mats or even ceramic pillows, which you've encountered before, would be preferred. In winter, the warmth of the Kong bed section 3 or heavier quilts would be essential. This seasonal adaptation wasn't just about comfort, it was deeply rooted in the philosophy of balancing the body's yin and yang energies with the changing natural world. Misaligning one's sleep with the seasons could lead to illness or imbalance. The ancient Chinese, through their seasonal sleep adjustments, demonstrated a profound respect for nature's rhythms, integrating their very rest into the larger cosmic dance. It's a reminder that sometimes the best sleep advice comes from simply listening to the world outside your window. You've just learned how ancient Chinese sleep patterns gracefully adapted to the ebb and flow of the seasons. Now let's consider a segment of the population whose rest was far less predictable, often snatched in fleeting moments away from the comforts of home, travel, and transient rest. For soldiers, merchants, officials on duty, and everyday travelers, sleep was a constantly negotiated challenge, demanding resilience and ingenuity. A mainstream historical fact is that travel in ancient China, whether by foot, horseback, cart, or boat, was arduous and time-consuming. Roads were often unpaved inns, rudimentary, and dangers like bandits or harsh weather ever present. You imagine a weary merchant having walked for days, collapsing onto a hard plank bed in a crowded, noisy inn, trying to find a moment of peace amidst unfamiliar sounds and smells. He probably thought the greatest luxury wasn't silk or jade, but a quiet, uninterrupted hour of sleep. Now for a quirky tidbit. Soldiers on campaign faced with the ultimate transient sleep conditions often develop the ability to sleep in almost any posture or location, standing, leaning against a tree, or even briefly in the saddle. There are accounts of soldiers training themselves to awaken instantly at the slightest sound of alarm, a testament to their hypervigilance even in slumber. Imagine a grizzled veteran catching a few minutes of sleep propped against his spear, his body a testament to extreme adaptation. Historians still argue whether the remarkable adaptability of soldiers' sleep patterns was purely a result of military training and necessity, or if it also reflected a broader cultural resilience to discomfort. Perhaps it was a skill honed by both rigorous discipline and an ingrained acceptance of hardship. You realize that for travelers, securing safe and sufficient rest was a constant concern. Inns, while providing shelter, were rarely quiet or private. Sleeping in unfamiliar environments exposed to new sounds, smells, and potential dangers would naturally impact sleep quality. Yet the body's fundamental need for rest would eventually overpower these obstacles. You can almost feel the exhaustion seeping into your bones after a long day's journey, the desperate longing for even a few hours of oblivion. Methods for transient rest varied greatly by status and circumstance. A wealthy merchant might afford a slightly more private room in an inn, perhaps even bringing his own portable bedding. A lower status traveler or pilgrim might simply sleep by the roadside wrapped in a blanket, seeking shelter under a tree or in a makeshift lean-to. The ancient Chinese understanding of balancing yin and yang. Remember, section 13 would also apply here. After strenuous travel, a very yang activity, the body would crave yin, rest and quiet, to restore balance. Finding ways to achieve this even in imperfect conditions was crucial for continued journeying. The use of simple portable sleeping aids like rolled mats or perhaps a small firm pillow, similar to those used at home but easily carried, would have been common. The world of travel and transient rest in ancient China reveals a deep human resilience where sleep was often a precious commodity, snatched wherever and whenever possible, a testament to the body's enduring need for repose amidst constant movement. You've just witnessed the resilience of travelers snatching sleep wherever they could. Now let's bring it back to a more deliberate and spiritual approach to nighttime rest, sleep hygiene and feng shui. For the ancient Chinese, the arrangement of one's sleeping space wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about harmonizing with cosmic energies to ensure peaceful slumber and optimal well-being. A mainstream historical fact is that feng shui, literally wine and water, is an ancient Chinese practice of arranging living spaces to optimize the flow of Kuai life force and promote harmony, health, and prosperity. These principles extended directly to the bedroom and the placement of beds. You imagine an ancient Chinese scholar meticulously positioning his sleeping platform compass in hand, ensuring it aligns with auspicious directions and avoids disruptive energies. He probably thought messy bed sheets disrupted the cosmic flow more than a bad argument. Now, for a Worcestershire quirky tidbit, specific feng shui principles for beds included avoiding direct alignment with doors or windows, as Quirky could flow too quickly and disturb sleep, placing the headboard against a solid wall for support and security, and avoiding mirrors facing the bed, believed to reflect negative energy or disturb the soul's rest. Some even believe that sleeping with your head pointed towards certain cardinal directions could bring different fortunes or affect specific organs. Imagine someone carefully avoiding sleeping with their feet towards the door, not just for privacy, but to prevent their kimayarn from escaping during the night. Historians still argue whether the detailed feng shui guidelines for sleep were primarily based on empirical observation of what led to comfortable rest, or if their more mystical interpretations were the main driving force behind their strict adherence. Perhaps it was a practical system enhanced by deeply held spiritual beliefs. You realize that for the ancient Chinese, sleep hygiene went far beyond simply having a clean bed. It was about creating an environment where the body and spirit could truly rest and rejuvenate, free from negative influences. The positioning of the bed, the furniture in the room, and even the objects placed nearby were all considered for their impact on sleep quality and overall well-being. You can almost feel the serene energy of a carefully arranged sleeping space, promoting a sense of calm and security. The goal of feng shui in the bedroom was to create a balanced yin environment conducive to rest and quiet contemplation. This meant avoiding bright, stimulating colors, harsh lighting, or excessive clutter, all of which were believed to create too much yang energy, leading to restlessness and disturbed sleep. This meticulous attention to sleep environment reflects a holistic understanding of health. They believed that proper rest was not merely the absence of wakefulness, but an active process of renewal deeply influenced by the invisible forces of the cosmos. The ancient Chinese, through their intricate sleep hygiene and feng shui practices, transformed the act of arranging a bedroom into a profound art of living in harmony with the universe, all in pursuit of a truly restful and invigorating slumber. You've just learned how feng shui principles guided the careful arrangement of ancient Chinese sleeping spaces. Now let's explore a delightful and widely accepted aspect of their daily rhythm that might make your modern boss raise an eyebrow. Napping culture, midday drowsiness. For the ancient Chinese, a quick snooze in the middle of the day wasn't a sign of laziness. It was a common, often encouraged practice for enhancing productivity and well-being. A more mainstream historical fact is that midday napping was a widely accepted and practiced habit across various social classes in ancient China. Unlike some Western cultures where napping might be seen as unproductive, the Chinese embraced it as a natural and beneficial part of the day. You imagine a bustling marketplace quieting down during the hottest hours, with vendors and laborers alike finding a shaded spot to recline for a brief period of rest. He probably thought a mid-afternoon energy drink was just a sign you weren't napping enough. Now, for a quirky tidbit, the timing and duration of these naps were often subtly aligned with the body's natural circadian rhythm, particularly the post-lunch dip in energy. Traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, even prescribes specific times for napping, often advising a short nap between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., aligning with the fire element and the heart meridian, believed to be the most active during these hours. A short nap during this time was thought to nourish the heart and spirit, promoting mental clarity for the afternoon's work. Imagine a busy scholar, after a morning of intense study, taking a brief restorative nap at his desk, head resting on his hard pillow, ready to resume his intellectual pursuits with renewed vigor. Historians still argue whether the widespread practice of napping was primarily a physiological response to the climate and an agrarian lifestyle, or if it was actively promoted by TCM theories to enhance health and productivity. Perhaps it was a practical custom that gained theoretical justification, becoming deeply ingrained in their daily lives. You realize that embracing the midday nap was a pragmatic response to both climate and workload. In warmer regions, a nap offered respite from the midday heat, allowing for more comfortable work during the cooler morning and late afternoon hours. Remember, seasonal sleep adjustments from Section 13. For laborers, it provided a vital energy boost for the arduous tasks of the second half of the day. You can almost feel the gentle drowsiness settling in after a midday meal, an invitation to a brief restorative slumber. The social acceptance of napping meant there was less stigma attached to it. People weren't expected to push through exhaustion. Instead, a short rest was seen as a wise way to conserve energy and maintain efficiency. This cultural norm allowed for a more flexible and humane approach to daily rhythms than many modern rigid work schedules. Even in imperial settings, while formal nap times might not have been explicitly scheduled for all the practice of discreetly taking catnaps. Remember, courtiers' clandestine catnaps from Section 6 was widespread, indicating a tacit understanding of its necessity. The ancient Chinese, with their robust napping culture, remind us that sometimes a brief surrender to midday drowsiness is not a weakness, but a wise investment in sustained energy and well-being, a delightful ancient hack for daily productivity. You've just indulged in the delightful practicality of ancient Chinese napping culture. Now let's see how these unique sleep habits, both practical and mystical, found their way into the creative expressions of the time, sleep in art and literature. For ancient Chinese artists and writers, sleep was a rich subject portrayed with humor, reverence, and often with a touch of the quirky details we've explored. A wider mainstream historical fact is that classical Chinese poetry, paintings, and prose frequently depicted scenes of daily life, nature, and philosophical reflection, often including moments of sleep or dreaming. These depictions offer invaluable insights into the cultural perceptions and practices surrounding rest. You imagine a scroll painting its delicate brushstrokes, showing a scholar dozing by a flowing stream, or a poem wistfully describing a dream of distant mountains. He probably thought his best metaphors came from that hazy space between waking and sleeping. Now, for a quirky tidbit, artists and poets sometimes subtly incorporated details of the hard pillow. Remember Section 2 into their works not as a sign of discomfort, but as a subtle visual cue for the scholar's discipline or the wise man's clarity of mind. A figure might be depicted resting their head directly on a ceramic pillow, or a poet might refer to the cool jade rest beneath his head as he contemplates profound thoughts. This seemingly uncomfortable detail became a symbol of intellectual rigor and health. Imagine a painting where a figure seemingly asleep has a perfectly straight neck thanks to his unyielding headrest, a silent nod to his excellent posture and internal balance. Historians still argue whether the artistic depictions of sleep were primarily idealized representations of philosophical ideals, or if they genuinely reflected the common sleep practices of the time, providing a realistic glimpse into daily life. Perhaps it was a blend of both art reflecting and shaping reality. You realize that sleep in Chinese art and literature was often imbued with philosophical or spiritual meaning. A scholar's nap might symbolize his detachment from worldly concerns, or a dream sequence might represent a journey of the soul. The serenity of sleep was frequently contrasted with the chaos of waking life, emphasizing the importance of rest for mental peace. You can almost feel the quietude captured in a painting of a figure in deep slumber, a moment of profound calm. Poetry, in particular, often played with the themes of dreams and their elusive nature. Remember, dream interpretation from Section 11. Poets would describe vivid dreamscapes, lament disturbed sleep due to worries, or express longing for restful slumber. These literary excursions into the world of dreams provide a rich tapestry of emotional and psychological experiences related to sleep. Even the natural environment's influence on sleep, such as the tranquility of a garden or the sound of flowing water, was often beautifully captured in art and literature, reinforcing the idea of harmonizing with nature for optimal rest. Remember seasonal sleep adjustments from Section 13. The depiction of sleep in ancient Chinese art and literature offers a unique window into their collective psyche, revealing a culture that revered rest not just as a physical necessity, but as a profound and often mystical dimension of human existence, full of quiet beauty and subtle quirks. You've just seen how sleep, with all its quirky nuances, found its way into the beautiful art and literature of ancient China. Now let's turn our attention to a very specific, delicate phase of life and how sleep was carefully managed during it. Pregnant women's resting rituals. For expectant mothers in ancient China, sleep was not just about personal comfort. It was deeply intertwined with the well-being of the unborn child, surrounded by specific practices and beliefs. A mainstream historical fact is that traditional Chinese society placed immense importance on the health and development of the fetus, with numerous customs and recommendations surrounding pregnancy known as taijiao, or fetal education. This holistic approach extended to the mother's sleep, believing that her rest, emotional state, and physical comfort directly influenced the baby. You imagine an expectant mother in a quiet, serene chamber, her movements slow and deliberate as she prepares for rest, surrounded by an atmosphere of careful nurturing. She probably thought that a restless night meant a restless future for her little one, so sleeping well was a civic duty. Now for a quirky tidbit. Traditional Chinese medical texts and folk customs offered precise advice on sleeping postures for pregnant women. It was commonly advised to sleep on one side, particularly the left side, as it was believed to promote better circulation for both mother and fetus and prevent pressure on vital organs. Some texts even suggested changing sleeping positions periodically throughout the night to ensure even qi flow. Imagine a woman heavy with child meticulously adjusting her position, not for her own immediate comfort, but for the perceived benefit of the life growing within her, following centuries of accumulated wisdom. Historians still argue whether these specific sleep postures were based on genuinely observed physiological benefits, which modern medicine often confirms for side sleeping in later pregnancy, or if they were primarily rooted in symbolic and theoretical interpretations of qi flow. Perhaps it was a practical observation that found its place within a broader philosophical framework. You realize that the emphasis was on creating a tranquil and stable environment for the mother to rest. This meant quiet chambers, comfortable but still likely firm, remember Section 2's hard pillows bedding, and the avoidance of any startling noises or disturbances. The aim was to promote deep, undisturbed sleep, allowing both mother and child to thrive. You can almost feel the gentle stillness of a room dedicated to expectant rest, a quiet sanctuary. Dietary recommendations also played a role in promoting good sleep for pregnant women, often involving nourishing foods believed to calm the spirit and strengthen the body. Remember medicinal herbs for sleep from Section 10. Herbs traditionally associated with calming the fetus or promoting restful sleep might be consumed as teas or in simple meals. The dreams of pregnant women were also paid close attention to. Remember dream interpretation from Section 11, as they were sometimes believed to foretell the child's future or indicate the baby's health. Therefore, ensuring peaceful, auspicious dreams became another aspect of their sleep rituals. The ancient Chinese approach to pregnant women's resting rituals reveals a deeply respectful and holistic understanding of maternal and fetal well-being, where every aspect of sleep was carefully considered for the sake of the new life to come. You've just explored the careful resting rituals for pregnant women intertwined with beliefs about fetal well-being. Now let's tiptoe into the smaller, cozier corners of ancient Chinese homes and peek into the enchanting world of Huanchun, children's sleep and storytelling. For the youngest members of society, bedtime was often a gentle ritual filled with comforting words, imaginative tales, and specific practices to ensure peaceful slumber. Other mainstream historical fact is that storytelling was a deeply ingrained part of ancient Chinese culture, passed down orally through generations, often serving to educate, entertain, and transmit moral values. Bedtime was a natural time for these stories to come alive. You imagine a mother or grandmother, perhaps by the soft glow of an oil lamp, sitting beside a child on a warm Kong bed. Remember Section 3, her voice a low, soothing murmur, as she weaves a tale of mischievous foxes or brave heroes. He probably thought falling asleep was just the intermission before the next dream adventure. Now for a quirky tidbit, some bedtime stories or lullabies in ancient China were not just entertaining. They subtly incorporated practical advice or cultural values related to sleep and behavior. For instance, tales might describe the importance of early rising, remember Section 1, or caution against restless sleep disturbing the household. Lullabies might mention auspicious animals or natural elements, subtly connecting the child's sleep to the cosmic harmony. Imagine a lullaby that warns a child not to toss and turn lest they disturb the little spirits, guarding their dreams, subtly encouraging stillness for better rest. Historians still argue whether the didactic elements in children's bedtime stories were primarily a conscious educational tool, or if they were simply reflections of broader societal values that naturally seeped into narratives meant for children. Perhaps it was an unconscious blending of cultural transmission and tender care. You realize that the environment for children's sleep was often communal, especially in humble homes. Children might sleep alongside parents or siblings on the same kangai or mat, surrounded by the familiar sounds of family. This close proximity would offer a sense of security and warmth conducive to peaceful rest. You can almost feel the gentle rhythmic breathing of a sleeping family, a comforting backdrop to a child's slumber. The pre-bedtime rituals would be simple but consistent. A warm drink, perhaps a diluted herbal tea, remember, medicinal herbs for sleep from section 10, or a small bowl of rice gruel would help settle their stomachs. A soft massage or gentle rocking might soothe them into drowsiness. These consistent routines help to establish a sense of predictability and safety essential for a child's restful sleep. The content of the stories varied greatly, from folk tales about mythical creatures to moral fables, and sometimes even simplified versions of historical events. But their purpose remained constant: to calm the child's mind, spark their imagination, and gently usher them into the world of dreams. The ancient Chinese, through their enchanting traditions of children's sleep and storytelling, cultivated rest as a nurturing and imaginative journey, a beautiful blend of comfort, education, and love. You've just been lulled by the enchanting world of ancient Chinese children's sleep and storytelling. Now let's fast forward through the years and consider how sleep was perceived for those who had accumulated a lifetime of wisdom. Elderly sleep and longevity beliefs. For the ancient Chinese, the quality and patterns of sleep in old age were profoundly linked to concepts of longevity, health, and the very essence of a well-lived life. A resurgent mainstream historical fact is that in traditional Chinese culture, great reverence was paid to the elderly, and longevity was a highly cherished aspiration, often seen as a sign of virtue and good fortune. Traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, and Taoist practices offered numerous recommendations for maintaining health into old age, with sleep being a critical component. You imagine an esteemed elder, their face lined with wisdom, reclining on their kang bed. Remember section 3, or a comfortable wooden daybed enjoying a tranquil afternoon nap. He probably thought his peaceful slumber was a secret ingredient in his long and prosperous life. Now for a one quirky tidbit. Traditional Chinese medical texts often observe that as people aged, their sleep patterns naturally shifted, often becoming lighter and more fragmented, closer to the biphasic sleep of earlier times, but for different reasons. Instead of viewing this as a problem, it was often framed as a natural, even advantageous part of aging, allowing for more time for quiet contemplation or spiritual practice during the night. Some Taoist longevity practices even involve specific sleep-like meditations or inner cultivation techniques, performed in old age, blurring the lines between sleep and active spiritual work. Imagine an aged scholar waking in the middle of the night, not with frustration, but with a serene acceptance, using the quiet hours for reflection or light reading. Historians still argue whether the acceptance of fragmented sleep in old age was primarily a pragmatic adjustment to physiological changes, or if it was deeply integrated into philosophical and spiritual views on aging and wisdom. Perhaps it was a comforting blend of both, finding meaning in natural transitions. You realize that for the elderly, adequate rest was seen as crucial for conserving QA life force and preserving vitality. Overexertion or insufficient sleep could hasten decline. Therefore, a focus on regular restorative sleep, including midday naps, remember section 16, would be emphasized. Their sleep environment would be carefully managed for comfort and tranquility, often prioritizing warmth in winter and coolness in summer. Remember seasonal adjustments from section 13. You can almost feel the gentle, unhurried pace of an elder's day, carefully structured to allow ample time for repose and rejuvenation. The dreams of the elderly were also sometimes given special significance, particularly those that offered insights into the past or provided a sense of peace. Remember dream interpretation from section 11. Ensuring tranquil dreams through calming herbs or meditation was therefore important. Ultimately, the ancient Chinese believed that a good death was preceded by a good life, and a significant part of that good life involved harmonious sleep. The practices surrounding elderly sleep were not just about physical health, they were about cultivating a peaceful mind, conserving precious life force, and preparing for a serene transition, making sleep an integral part of their philosophy of longevity and wisdom. Their approach reminds us that rest in all stages of life is a profound and vital component of well-being. You've just pondered the wisdom of elderly sleep and its connection to longevity in ancient China. Now let's delve into the less rational but equally powerful influences on sleep. Sleep-related superstitions. For the ancient Chinese, the nocturnal world was often fraught with hidden dangers and auspicious signs leading to a fascinating array of beliefs and taboos surrounding sleep and dreams. Mythology mainstream historical fact is that traditional Chinese culture, like many ancient societies, was deeply influenced by folklore geomancy and beliefs in spirits and unseen forces. These superstitions often dictated specific behaviors around daily activities, including sleep to invite good fortune or ward off evil. You imagine a household meticulously arranging sleeping mats or beds, not just for comfort, but to avoid an unlucky direction or appease a mischievous spirit. He probably thought a ghost under his bed was far scarier than a missed appointment. Now for a quirky tidbit. Certain sleeping positions or habits were considered particularly unlucky or could invite negative influences. For instance, sleeping with one's feet directly facing a door was often taboo as it was believed to resemble the position of a corpse being carried out or to allow good quiet to escape the body. Similarly, sleeping directly under a beam was avoided as it was thought to bring oppressive energy or misfortune down upon the sleeper. Imagine someone meticulously repositioning their bed by mere inches, not for comfort, but to avoid an unseen alignment with a perceived bad omen. Historians still argue whether the adherence to these sleep superstitions was primarily driven by genuine fear of supernatural forces, or if they served as practical rules of thumb that indirectly promoted better sleep hygiene, e.g. avoiding drafts from doors. Perhaps it was a practical custom that gained mystical justification intertwining the mundane with the supernatural. You realize that for the ancient Chinese, the line between the physical and spiritual world was often permeable, especially during sleep. The vulnerability of sleep meant that one had to be particularly careful to protect oneself from malevolent spirits or negative energies. This led to practices like placing auspicious charms near the bed, or even specific arrangements of furniture. Remember Feng Shui from section 15 to ensure a protective flow of energy. You can almost feel the invisible currents of belief shaping the very space around a sleeping figure, a silent guardian against unseen threats. Dreams, as you know, remember, dream interpretation from section 11 were a prime avenue for communication from the spirit world, and thus dreams of certain symbols, like teeth falling out or black birds, could induce significant anxiety, requiring specific rituals or offerings to avert predicted misfortune. This added a layer of psychological complexity to their nightly rest. The beliefs surrounding sleep also extended to the timing of sleep. Waking too suddenly or disturbing someone's sleep too abruptly could be seen as damaging to their spirit or inviting ill fortune. This encouraged a gentle approach to rousing others. The sleep-related superstitions of the ancient Chinese transformed the act of rest into a delicate negotiation with the unseen world, where every bedtime ritual held a quiet hope for protection and good fortune. You've just explored the fascinating, often superstitious beliefs that shaped ancient Chinese sleep. Now let's consider a more tangible practice that prepared the body and mind for peaceful slumber: bathing rituals before bed. For the ancient Chinese, a warm bath or a soothing foot soak wasn't just about cleanliness. It was a deliberate and often therapeutic prelude to rest away to shed the day's fatigue and invite tranquility. A Rus mainstream historical fact is that bathing was an important part of personal hygiene and spiritual purification in ancient China, though the frequency and elaborate nature varied by social class and era. While not everyone had access to private bathhouses, warm foot soaks were a common and highly valued practice. You imagine a weary scholar, after a long day of study, immersing his feet in a basin of warm, fragrant water, feeling the day's tensions begin to melt away. He probably thought a good foot soak was more relaxing than a philosophical debate, especially if it involved an uncomfortable argument. Now, for a quirky tidbit, traditional Chinese medicine TCM strongly advocated for warm foot soaks before bed, believing it stimulated circulation, drew qi downwards from the head, calming the mind, and helped to balance the body's yin and yang energy. Specific herbs like ginger or mugwort might be added to the bathwater for their warming or calming properties, enhancing the therapeutic effect. Imagine a noblewoman soaking her feet in water infused with fragrant herbs, not just for cleanliness, but for the explicit purpose of inducing a deep restorative sleep. Historians still argue whether the perceived health benefits of these bathing rituals were purely psychosomatic, or if the physical effects of warm water and specific herbs had a genuine measurable impact on sleep quality. Perhaps it was a comforting ritual that provided real physiological relaxation. You realize that for many ancient Chinese who might have labored physically during the day or faced mental exertion as scholars or officials, a warm bath or foot soak offered a crucial transition from activity to rest. It signaled to the body and mind that the day's work was done and it was time to unwind. You can almost feel the soothing warmth spreading through your body, loosening tight muscles and easing a busy mind. The communal bathhouses found in some cities or within larger residences also offered a social element, but the private foot soak was a personal ritual, a moment of quiet self-care before retreating to bed. This focus on the feet, believed to be connected to various meridians and organs in TCM, highlights a holistic understanding of the body's energy pathways and their role in sleep. This practice of deliberate preparation for sleep through physical relaxation and the balancing of internal energies demonstrates a sophisticated approach to sleep hygiene. It was about creating the optimal physiological and mental conditions for rest using readily available natural resources. The bathing rituals before bed were more than just about getting clean. They were an intentional act of self-care, a warm invitation to a night of peaceful, restorative slumber in ancient China. You've just dipped your toes into the soothing bathing rituals that prepared ancient Chinese for sleep. Now let's add another layer to their pre-slumber preparation, one that tantalized the senses and purified the air. Aromatherapy for slumber. For them, fragrant herbs and incense weren't just about pleasant smells. They were powerful tools to calm the mind, invite peaceful dreams, and enhance the quality of rest. A mainstream historical fact is that the ancient Chinese had a sophisticated understanding of aromatics using incense, fragrant woods, and essential oils for religious ceremonies, perfumes, and medicinal purposes. This knowledge extended directly to the bedroom. You imagine a small incense burner in a quiet sleeping chamber, a delicate wisp of fragrant smoke curling upwards, filling the air with a calming aroma. He probably thought his sleep spells were as effective as any potion, just without the messy bubbling. Now, for a quirky tidbit, specific scents were believed to have particular effects on the mind and body, influencing dreams and emotions during sleep. For instance, sandalwood and agarwood were prized for their calming and meditative properties, believed to clear the mind and deepen spiritual contemplation. Jasmine and lavender. Though the latter might have been known by different names or types of flowering plants, were used for their soothing qualities, thought to reduce anxiety and induce peaceful slumber. Imagine a courtier worried about political intrigue, subtly burning a small sliver of precious agarwood before bed, hoping its scent would bring him tranquil dreams and alleviate his stress. Historians still argue whether the perceived benefits of aromatherapy for sleep were primarily psychological, the power of suggestion and association, or if the chemical compounds in the burning herbs truly had a physiological effect on the nervous system. Perhaps it was a delightful and effective combination of both, a gentle sensory nudge towards repose. You realize that aromatherapy wasn't about overpowering scents, but subtle infusions that permeated the sleeping environment. Incense burners would be small and discreet, placed away from direct contact with bedding. Dried fragrant herbs might be tucked into pillows. Remember those hard pillows from Section 2, or placed in small sachets near the bed, releasing their aromas slowly throughout the night. You can almost smell the faint woody notes of sandalwood, a calming presence in the quiet darkness. The choice of aroma could also be personalized depending on the individual's needs or the prevailing season. Remember seasonal sleep adjustments from Section 13. A warming, stimulating scent might be used in winter to promote inner heat, while a cooler, more refreshing aroma might be preferred in summer to aid relaxation in the heat. This mindful use of scent demonstrates a holistic approach to sleep hygiene, recognizing that the olfactory sense could play a powerful role in preparing the mind and body for rest. It transformed the sleeping chamber into a sensory sanctuary, carefully curated to invite the deepest and most harmonious slumber. The ancient Chinese, through their sophisticated use of aromatherapy, added another sensory layer to their pursuit of peaceful and restorative nights. You've just been enveloped by the soothing sense of ancient Chinese aromatherapy for slumber. Now let's turn our attention to another sensory element that helped guide the ancient Chinese into peaceful sleep: music and sounds for sleep. For them, specific melodies, natural sounds, or even controlled noises weren't just background. They were deliberate tools to calm the mind and body, preparing them for a tranquil night's rest. A Freud mainstream historical fact is that music played a significant role in ancient Chinese society, used for ceremonies, entertainment, and as a tool for emotional and spiritual cultivation. This understanding of music's power extended to its therapeutic applications, including promoting relaxation and sleep. You imagine a musician, perhaps in a quiet courtyard, gently plucking the strings of a guqin or pipa, its soft notes drifting through the evening air, a lullaby for the soul. He probably thought a good melody was more effective than any sleeping potion, and certainly had fewer side effects. Now for a quirky tidbit. Traditional Chinese medical texts and philosophical writings often discuss the specific emotional and physical effects of different musical scales or instruments. Certain melodies deemed harmonious or calming were recommended for nighttime listening, particularly those that mimicked natural sounds or evoked a sense of peace. For instance, the gentle strumming of a zither or the soft tones of a bamboo flute might be prescribed to an insomniac to balance their qiyame and soothe their spirit. Imagine a courtier troubled by the day's political intrigues requesting a eunuch to play a specific calming melody on a small flute outside his chambers, hoping its notes would chase away his anxieties and invite sleep. Historians still argue whether the detailed effects attributed to specific musical modes were purely anecdotal and culturally constructed, or if the consistent exposure to certain sound patterns genuinely had a physiological calming effect. Perhaps it was a powerful blend of cultural belief and acoustic therapy. You realize that beyond intentional music, the sounds of nature were also deeply appreciated for their calming properties. The gentle patter of rain on a tiled roof, the distant chirping of crickets, the soft rustle of leaves in the wind, or the steady flow of water in a garden pond. Remember our discussion of water features? These were often seen as ideal sleep sounds, fostering a connection to the natural world and promoting tranquility. You can almost hear the soft rhythmic sounds of the ancient night, a symphony of natural peace. Even the rhythmic clappers and drums of palace watchmen, remember Section 12, might have for some become a reassuring sound of security, a familiar pattern that indicated all was well and provided a subtle auditory cue for sleep. What might seem like a disruption to us was for them a signal of order. The intentional use of music and the appreciation of natural sounds for sleep highlight a sophisticated awareness of the sensory environment's impact on rest. It transformed the approach to sleep from a mere biological necessity into an orchestrated experience where sound became a gentle guide to profound slumber. The ancient Chinese, through their mindful cultivation of a harmonious soundscape, added another layer of artistry to their pursuit of peaceful and restorative nights. You've just been soothed by the calming music and natural sounds that helped ancient Chinese sleep. Now let's explore a profound, often mystical dimension to their nightly rest, one that connected the living to the departed, sleeping with ancestors' presence. For the ancient Chinese, the act of slumber was sometimes believed to be a period of spiritual vulnerability, but also an opportunity for connection with the revered spirits of their forebears. A shared mainstream historical fact is that ancestor veneration was a cornerstone of ancient Chinese society, deeply influencing family structure, rituals, and daily life. Ancestors were believed to continue to exist in the spirit world, capable of influencing the fortunes of their living descendants, and were regularly honored with offerings and rituals. You imagine a family home, an ancestral altar carefully placed in a central area, and the living sleeping nearby, a tangible connection across realms. He probably thought his great-great-grandparents were just keeping an eye on him while he caught some Z's. Now for a quirky tidbit. Some traditional beliefs held that during sleep, the soul Hun could temporarily leave the body and wander, making the sleeper vulnerable. To protect oneself and ensure the soul's safe return, certain rituals or arrangements might be made. Conversely, dream interpretation from Section 11 were often seen as direct communications from ancestors offering guidance, warnings, or blessings. Some families might even orient their sleeping arrangements to symbolically face the ancestral altar, creating a continuous line of connection and protection. Imagine a child being told a bedtime story about how their ancestors watch over them as they sleep, guiding their dreams and keeping them safe from harm, a comforting thought rooted in deep tradition. Historians still argue whether the belief in active ancestral presence during sleep was primarily a spiritual conviction or if it also served a psychological function, providing comfort and a sense of continuity in a world prone to uncertainty. Perhaps it was a profound synthesis of faith and emotional security. You realize that for many, sleep was not just a personal act, but a moment within a larger unbroken chain of generations. The proximity to ancestral tablets or altars even in sleep would reinforce this spiritual connection. The belief that ancestors were watching over them, subtly protecting them from malevolent spirits or ill dreams, would have provided a profound sense of security, allowing for deeper, less troubled rest. You can almost feel the invisible, comforting presence of generations past, a quiet guardianship in the stillness of the night. This spiritual dimension of sleep also influenced practices related to death. The arrangement of the deceased in their final resting place was often mirrored by sleeping positions, creating a symbolic continuum between life and the afterlife. This meant that the act of sleeping held an inherent reverence, a mini rehearsal for the ultimate transition. The various sleep-related superstitions, remember Section 21, were also intertwined with ancestral beliefs, as avoiding certain unlucky placements or actions might be seen as honoring the ancestors and ensuring their continued benevolent influence. The ancient Chinese, through their deep reverence for ancestors, transformed sleep from a mere physical function into a sacred communion, a nightly embrace of family and heritage that transcended the boundaries of life and death. It's a truly unique way of integrating the past into the present, even in slumber. You've just explored the mystical connection to ancestors during sleep, a profound spiritual dimension to ancient Chinese rest. Now let's bring it back to the material comfort, or lack thereof, that shaped their nightly repose. Textiles and bedding comfort. For the ancient Chinese, the quality, type, and layering of mattresses, blankets, and coverings were crucial, varying widely by season and social status, and reflecting their pragmatic approach to sleep. A mainstream historical fact is that ancient Chinese beds, even for the wealthy, rarely featured the soft-sprung mattresses we know today. Instead, the primary sleeping surface was typically a firm platform, like the Kang bed you explored in Section 3, or a raised wooden frame. Comfort came from the layers of textiles placed on top, mats, quilts, and blankets made from natural fibers. You imagine preparing a bed first, a woven mat, then perhaps a thin mattress stuffed with straw or cotton, then layers of blankets, each chosen for the season. He probably thought our spring mattresses were just an elaborate way to avoid actually doing laundry. Now for a quirky tidbit. The choice of sleeping mat material varied drastically with the seasons. In hot summers, woven bamboo or rush mats were commonly used directly on the firm bed platform. These materials were naturally cooling, allowing air to circulate and dissipating body heat, providing a refreshing surface for slumber. In winter, these would be replaced by padded cotton quilts or even animal furs for warmth. Imagine the cool, smooth feel of a bamboo mat against your skin on a sweltering night, a simple yet highly effective ancient air conditioning system. Historians still argue whether the widespread use of different seasonal bedding materials was purely a pragmatic response to climate, or if it also reflected a deeper cultural appreciation for adapting to nature's rhythms, promoting different kinds of qi flow for different seasons. Perhaps it was a practical custom that reinforced their holistic health philosophy. You realize that bedding was all about layering. A thin, firm mattress, often just a padded quilt, would lie on the hard surface. On top of that, a variety of blankets, lighter cotton or silk in milder weather, heavier wool, or multi-layered padded quilts in winter. This allowed for precise temperature control, adding or removing layers as the night progressed or seasons shifted. You can almost feel the weight and texture of different materials, the crispness of linen, the softness of silk, the warmth of padded cotton, all contributing to a customized sleeping experience. For the wealthy, these textiles were incredibly luxurious. Silks dyed in rich colors, intricately embroidered patterns, and finely woven cottons would adorn their beds. Even the filling for padded quilts could be expensive, such as fine silk floss. For the less affluent, bedding would be simpler, perhaps unbleached cotton, or linen and straw, or coarse cotton batting for insulation. Despite the variations in luxury, the fundamental approach remained a firm sleeping surface softened and warmed or cooled by layers of natural textiles all adapted to the environment. The ancient Chinese, through their careful selection and layering of textiles and bedding, created a surprisingly adaptive and comfortable sleep environment, demonstrating a deep practical understanding of how materials could enhance the quality of their nightly rest, one carefully chosen layer at a time. You've just explored the tactile world of ancient Chinese bedding, where layers of textiles provided comfort and temperature control. Now let's turn our attention to the challenges faced when sleep proved elusive. Insomnia, ancient remedies, and concerns. For the ancient Chinese, sleeplessness wasn't just an annoyance. It was a serious concern often linked to imbalances in the body or spirit, prompting a range of fascinating diagnoses and treatments. Show mainstream historical fact is that traditional Chinese medicine TCM had a sophisticated understanding of sleep disorders, categorizing different types of insomnia based on symptoms and underlying causes, often linking them to imbalances of Qi life force, blood yin and yang, or specific organ systems like the heart, liver, or spleen. You imagine an ancient physician listening intently to a patient, describe their restless nights, their mind working to identify the subtle disharmony causing the sleeplessness. He probably thought counting sheep was a good distraction, but a terrible cure. Now for a quirky tidbit, some common ancient remedies for insomnia might seem unusual by modern standards, but were rooted in TCM theory. For instance, consuming specific animal parts like pig heart or sheep brain was sometimes prescribed based on the belief that like nourishes like. The animal's heart or brain would nourish the human heart or brain, which were associated with sleep and mental clarity. Another approach involved using heavy minerals or substances like cinnabar, though often with caution due to toxicity believed to anchor the spirit and prevent it from wandering during sleep. Imagine a patient being told to eat a pig's heart for a good night's sleep, a rather intense bedtime snack. Historians still argue whether the more unusual or potentially harmful ancient remedies for insomnia were genuinely effective, perhaps due to placebo effect or subtle physiological impacts not fully understood, or if they reflect a trial and error approach where dangerous practices were eventually abandoned. Perhaps it was a testament to their desperation and willingness to experiment. You realize that the diagnosis of insomnia went beyond just can't sleep. A TCM practitioner would inquire about specific symptoms: difficulty falling asleep, waking frequently, disturbing dreams. Remember Section 11, excessive sweating at night or feelings of anxiety. Each symptom would point to a different internal imbalance guiding the choice of treatment. You can almost feel the restless energy of a sleepless night, the mind replaying the day's anxieties. Treatments were holistic and multifaceted. Beyond diet, as we've explored with medicinal herbs and Section 10 acupuncture, was commonly used targeting specific points to calm the spirit and regulate Qi flow. Cupping, moxibustion, burning mugwort near the skin, and massage were also employed to relax the body and mind. Lifestyle advice such as avoiding stimulating activities before bed, practicing calming breathing exercises, or adjusting one's emotional state would also be paramount. The concern about insomnia wasn't just about individual suffering. It was also understood that prolonged sleeplessness could impact one's health, productivity, and even social harmony. Therefore, addressing sleep disorders was seen as crucial for individual well-being and the stability of the household or community. The ancient Chinese approach to insomnia reveals a deep, sophisticated understanding of the interconnectedness of mind, body, and spirit, transforming the challenge of sleeplessness into a complex diagnostic and therapeutic puzzle. You've just explored the ancient Chinese approach to combating insomnia, where complex diagnoses met diverse remedies. Now let's widen our lens to consider how sleep, or the lack thereof, could profoundly impact the highest levels of power. Sleep's role in governance. For emperors and their officials, adequate rest wasn't just a personal matter. It was intricately linked to effective leadership, state stability, and even the fortunes of the empire. A word mainstream historical fact is that Chinese emperors were expected to be diligent rulers, often rising before dawn to attend to state affairs, hold court, and review countless documents. Their physical and mental acuity was considered crucial for making wise decisions and maintaining the mandate of heaven. You imagine an emperor heavy with the weight of governing a vast empire, knowing that a sleepless night could mean a clouded judgment in the morning, potentially leading to disastrous consequences for his realm. He probably knew that a grumpy emperor made for a very grumpy empire, and nobody wanted that. Now for a just quirky tidbit, imperial physicians and astrologers would closely monitor the emperor's sleep patterns and dreams. Remember Section 11. Dream interpretation and omens. A sustained period of restless sleep or disturbing nightmares could be interpreted as an ominous sign for the empire, suggesting divine displeasure or impending calamity. Conversely, reports of an emperor enjoying peaceful, auspicious dreams could be deliberately circulated to bolster public confidence and project an image of a divinely favored ruler. Imagine imperial physicians subtly adjusting the emperor's diet or incense. Remember Section 23, aromatherapy for slumber, based on his reported dreams, believing it would not only improve his health but also stabilize the state. Historians still argue whether the reporting of the emperor's sleep and dreams was purely about health and well-being, or if it was often a tool for political manipulation, either by the emperor himself or by factions within the court, seeking to influence his image or decisions. Perhaps it was a complex interplay of genuine concern and strategic presentation. You realize that for high-ranking officials, sufficient sleep was essential. They often bore immense responsibilities and faced severe penalties for errors or incompetence. Prolonged sleep deprivation. Remember Section 7. Scholars' sleep sacrifices could impair their judgment, leading to poor policy decisions or a decline in administrative efficiency, which in turn could impact the entire government. You can almost feel the mental strain of an official pushing through exhaustion, knowing his next decision could affect thousands. The very rhythm of court life was designed to allow for periods of rest, even amidst demanding schedules. The biphasic sleep pattern. Remember Section 4 might have been particularly useful, allowing for a burst of activity in the pre-dawn hours, followed by a period of quiet reflection or further rest before the main business of the day. Midday naps. Remember Section 16, napping culture, midday drowsiness, for officials, even if clandestine, were a practical necessity to maintain their sharpness. Ultimately, the ancient Chinese understood that the health of the ruler, both physical and mental, was inextricably linked to the health of the state. Sleep as a fundamental component of well-being therefore played a profound, albeit often unstated role in the grand machinery of governance. The sleep habits of the powerful were not just personal quirks, they were vital threads in the tapestry of imperial rule. You've just considered the profound impact of sleep on the very governance of ancient China. Now let's widen our gaze to the great minds who pondered existence itself and how sleep fit into their diverse worldviews. Philosophers' views on sleep. For these intellectual titans, sleep was not merely a biological function, but a rich subject for contemplation, an enigma that connected the physical body to the nature of consciousness, reality, and even the cosmos. A mainstream historical fact is that various schools of thought in ancient China, including Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism, offered distinct perspectives on human nature, society, and the ideal way of life. Sleep as a fundamental human experience naturally found its place within these broader philosophical frameworks. You imagine a group of philosophers, perhaps at a private academy or a serene mountain retreat, engaging in a lively debate about the true nature of dreams or the purpose of unconsciousness. He probably thought discussing sleep was far more fascinating than actually getting it. Now, for a quirky tidbit, some Taoist thinkers pushing their ideas on harmony with nature, remember Section 8. Taoist sleep inner harmony sometimes viewed deep dreamless sleep as a temporary return to the primordial state of Wuji, ultimate nothingness, or a blissful merging with the Tao. This wasn't just about rest, it was a mini enlightenment. Conversely, some Confucian scholars focused on societal duty and continuous self-improvement might view excessive sleep or indulgence in dreams as a distraction from one's moral obligations. Imagine a Taoist sage describing a night of profound conscious slumber, while a Confucian scholar might lament a lazy morning spent in bed instead of study. Historians still argue whether the philosophical interpretations of sleep were purely abstract intellectual exercises or if they genuinely influenced the sleep practices of their adherents, creating distinct sleep cultures within different schools of thought. Perhaps it was a dynamic interplay where theory informed practice and practice in turn shaped theory. You realize that for these philosophers, sleep raised fundamental questions about the nature of the self. Where does consciousness go during sleep? Are dreams real or illusory? How does the mind function when the body is at rest? These were not just scientific questions, but profound existential inquiries. You can almost feel the quiet contemplation, the deep intellectual wrestling with the enigma of unconsciousness. Confucianism, with its emphasis on discipline, ritual, and moral cultivation, would naturally advocate for moderate and disciplined sleep patterns, ensuring one was always ready for study, family duties, and civic service. Sleep was necessary, but not to be indulged in excessively. Legalism focused on state control and pragmatic governance would likely view sleep primarily as a biological necessity to ensure a productive populace with little room for philosophical or spiritual interpretations beyond efficiency. Any sleep pattern that hindered productivity would be frowned upon. However, it was often the Taoists who delved most deeply into the mystical and transformative aspects of sleep. Their practices aimed to make sleep a conscious and spiritually enriching experience, a pathway to deeper understanding and longevity. They explored techniques to cultivate specific types of dreams, remember, dream interpretation from Section 11, or even to sustain a form of awareness during deep sleep. The philosophers' views on sleep reveal a rich, multifaceted understanding of human existence, where the nocturnal world was as fertile a ground for inquiry as the waking one. Whether seen as a biological necessity, a moral obligation, or a spiritual journey, sleep was never just an empty space between days. It was a profound realm worthy of the greatest minds of ancient China. You've just plumbed the depths of ancient Chinese philosophers' views on sleep, where rest was a profound subject for intellectual and spiritual inquiry. Now, as our journey through their quirky sleep habits comes to a gentle close, let's bring it all back to our modern world and reflect on how their ancient wisdom continues to echo in our contemporary lives. Enduring echoes of ancient rest. Their practices, beliefs, and even their hard pillows surprisingly offer timeless lessons for our often restless present. A modern mainstream historical fact is that modern society, particularly in the West, often struggles with widespread sleep deprivation, insomnia, and an over-reliance on artificial means to either induce or extend wakefulness. This contrasts sharply with the more natural, intuitive approach to sleep found in ancient cultures. You reflect on your own complex relationship with sleep, perhaps juggling alarm clocks and late-night screens, and compare it to the biphasic rhythms of the ancient Chinese. They probably thought our obsession with optimal sleep hacks was just proof we'd forgotten how to simply be. Now for a one quirky tidbit. Contemporary sleep science is increasingly recognizing the potential benefits of some ancient Chinese practices. For instance, the popularity of weighted blankets echoes the comforting pressure of a heavy quilt on a Kong bed, providing a sense of security. The resurgence of interest in segmented sleep among some sleep researchers, or the widespread adoption of meditation and mindfulness techniques before bed, directly mirrors Taoist and Buddhist approaches to restful awareness. Imagine a modern sleep expert recommending a hard cooling pillow, not just for neck support, but for Kwai flow, blending ancient wisdom with modern terminology. Historians still argue whether the apparent alignment of some ancient practices with modern science is mere coincidence or if it speaks to universal human physiological and psychological needs that traditional cultures intuitively addressed. Perhaps it's a testament to the enduring wisdom of long-term empirical observation, even without formal scientific methods. You consider the wisdom of adaptation. The ancient Chinese, whether adjusting sleep to the seasons, remember section 13, or finding rest amidst travel, remember section 14, demonstrated remarkable flexibility. This contrasts with our often rigid adherence to artificial schedules, reminding us that listening to our bodies in the natural world can be far more beneficial than fighting them. From the On Hard Pillows, remember section 2 to the emphasis on clean, calm sleeping environments. Remember section 15, Feng Shui. We see principles that are still relevant for creating a conducive sleep space. They're on napping culture. Remember section 16 offers a compelling argument for incorporating short restorative rests into our busy days, a simple way to boost energy and mental clarity. The Taoist and Buddhist approaches to sleep, viewing it as a period of active cultivation and inner harmony, challenge us to see rest not as a passive state of unconsciousness, but as an opportunity for profound self-care and even spiritual growth. Their use of herbs hurinirma. Remember section 10 and Yuirun, aromatherapy. Remember section 23 for sleep reminds us of nature's gentle remedies for restlessness. Ultimately, the enduring echoes of ancient Chinese rest whisper a powerful message. Sleep is a fundamental pillar of a well-lived life, intertwined with our physical health, mental clarity, and spiritual well-being. Their quirky habits, born of necessity and deep cultural understanding, offer a profound simplicity and a gentle challenge to our modern complexities, inviting us to rediscover the art of true repose. As the last lingering images of ancient Chinese sleepers fade from the emperor on his shifting bed to the scholar by his oil lamp, you feel the profound quiet settle around you. The distant clapper of a palace watchman, the gentle notes of a guqin, the subtle scent of sandalwood. These sensory whispers recede, leaving only a deep, comforting stillness. You are no longer observing history. You are simply resting enveloped by the present moment. Let the weight of the day lift like morning mist, and the complex thoughts about sleep, both ancient and modern, gently drift away. Feel the comfort beneath you, the quiet around you, and the peaceful rhythm of your own breath. The wisdom of ancient rest has shown you a path to deeper tranquility. Now dim the final lights in your mind and sink effortlessly into sweet, sweet dreams. Sweet dreams.